Now that Scott Frost is the man in Orlando, what does he have to accomplish this spring?
You are Locked On UCF, your daily podcast on the UCF Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on in to Locked On UCF, your daily UCF podcast. I'm your host, Mike G, and thank you so much for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every day. Joining me, as he will every week, is my good friend, Jake Crane from Crane & Co. over at the Daily Wire. Jake, thanks for joining me, man. Scott Frost is the man down in Orlando now. You and I have not had a chance to connect on this hire. I want to start with getting your thoughts on the Frost hire. There were some mixed feelings on both sides, but it's been mostly positive, rehiring of Scott Frost. What are your thoughts on this hire for UCF?
Well, Mike, it's good to see you, buddy. I promise everybody that heat works in my house. I just came from outside, so that's why I got the toboggan on, and it feels too good and it looks too good. The Oilers, I will always say, have the best uniform combo and logo. But
there you go.
I think, I could give you like a surface level answer of, I think it's a perfect slam dunk grand slam hire, or, I think it's an awful hire. But, the generic takes just drive me crazy. I think you got multiple ways to look at this thing, because there's multiple things going on, some that have stayed the same and some that have changed. Overall, I think it was a smart hire. I think it was not a safe hire, but if I brought a chef over 3 years ago and he cooked me an amazing meal for me and my family, the next time I bring that chef over, I'm going to assume they're going to cook a really nice meal for me and my family. Now, we may live in a different house with a different kitchen. He may be making a different meal, but you know what me and my family like. So what do I mean by that? I think Scott Frost, the things that have stayed the same is the standard at UCF is high, and it needs to remain high. And not just because they went to the Big 12. I think that UCF, the standard has been high there for a while, and a lot of that is because of what Josh Heupel and then obviously Scott Frost were able to accomplish. Now, from a recruiting standpoint, he knows the lay of the land. He doesn't need to go reintroduce himself or introduce himself to what schools have the best players, or what schools have the players that he's most likely to get, or what high school coaches that are still there that he trusts. He doesn't have to go in there and restructure everything. He knows the lay of the land. He knows where he needs to recruit and how he needs to recruit. So that's a big thing. He knows the people in the administration there at UCF. Not everybody's the same, but he knows how it operates. He knows where the cafeteria is. He knows where the facilities are. So there's a lot that have stayed the same for him that he doesn't need to relearn. What has changed is, yes, you're in a bigger and better conference. You look at the Big 12, the competition has gotten better. Not that it was bad when you were there the first time, but it's gotten better. The players are different, right? With NIL and the transfer portal, the game has continued to evolve to a point where everybody's had to change. So overall, I think it was a smart hire, because you don't have to really build a foundation there. You just got to make sure the furniture's good on the front porch, and you may need to put hardwood in the living room instead of carpet. So I think it was a smart hire overall. I think UCF fans should be excited. I think Scott Frost is hungry, right? Because he had to go back to the place where he built up a lot of equity to end up getting hired at Nebraska. But if you're UCF, it's a perfect situation, right? It's like the girl that you were in love with and she loved you, but all of a sudden she met a guy that played center field for the Astros. She left you. It didn't work out. And now she's back and she realizes how valuable you are. UCF is the center fielder of the Astros, right? For Scott Frost. You left him earlier. It didn't work out. Now you're back, and I think if he has this success in the Big 12, you're already in a Power 4 conference where Arizona State already proved that you can get a bye if you win it. The league's only going to get better. So I think he's very grateful for UCF letting him come back after he, kind of fell from grace, and therefore he would be much more reluctant to leave because he went back to his alma mater. He went back to Mama. Mama ain't calling again. I can promise you that. She wants nothing to do with you anymore. You got to go out and get it on your own. So I think it's a perfect marriage of a coach that can do it at that place and stay at that place that is evolved along with the game around it.
Like I know, Florida is one of the hottest recruiting beds in the country when it comes to high school football, Jake. So I think it's important what you said about understanding the landscape down there, going down into Florida. The relationships with high school coaches in the state of Florida and being able to recruit at a high level there. Scott Frost is a name that should still carry some weight down in the Orlando area, shouldn't it?
Oh, without a doubt. And you've proven that you can have success there. And again, I know the conference has changed, the landscape has changed, but that success in the past didn't change. And from everything that I've seen and read, he didn't do anybody wrong. Nobody blames him, I don't think, for going to Nebraska because that's where he played. It's hard to get mad at somebody for that. Now, if he had left and gone somewhere else, that may have looked like a lateral move. Like if he'd have gone to Houston or somewhere like that, all right, be upset. I get that, but I don't, if you're somewhat of a rational person, I know that's a lot asking fans because fans short for fanatical, but again, it's not like Kalen DeBoer going to Alabama and not knowing what the word Selma means, right? You ain't got to worry about Scott Frost knowing where to go to get guys and then those relationships that he built up over time. So there's so much that goes on outside of just the general stuff that people see that helps you get to a successful level. And a lot of that is already built in and been built up by Scott Frost.
Before we move topics here, I do want to point out the NIL dollars started to flow with this Frost hire. So the people with the money were really, really excited about this. They felt like this is somebody that we can throw some money behind. And like I know, Jake, in today's college football, you want to compete for championships, it's going to be hard to do that consistently without those dollars in NIL.
Without a doubt. And I know the Big 12 doesn't get the amount of money that the SEC gets or the Big 10 gets, but those media dollars really do matter because it's not just the NIL money to give out to recruits. It's a rat race for facilities. It's a rat race for FaceTime. So when you look at how quickly too you're able to build somebody back up because of the transfer portal, and then when you mix NIL with the transfer portal, that's how you can really flip something on its head. I mean, we can stay in the Big 12 and look at what Kenny Dillingham did at Arizona State. I think there's a similar path for UCF, being able to bring guys in and win now and develop younger guys as you do it. I always say when it comes to the transfer portal, in my opinion at least, you don't want to build the whole ship out of the transfer portal. You just want to plug the holes in the ship that you lose at the end of the year with it. And I think they can do that with the resources and what UCF has and the cachet of a guy like Scott Frost.
Agreed. Look, now that Frost is in the fold, what should fans expect in year one of the Scott Frost era? We're going to talk about that right after a quick word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Jake, college football playoff is here. I want a boatload of money betting on Ohio State to completely eradicate Oregon from the face of this playoffs, and they delivered. I know you are an avid parlay maker. Tell me about your recent successes on FanDuel. I know you bet.
Oh, look, when it comes to betting, and again, I don't think you want to overload yourself one way or the other, whether it's parlays or individual. I like a good mix, but I tell you what, man, if you did bet on Ohio State, you're a smart person. I betted Texas to make it all the way to the championship game. Not feeling great about that with after what Ohio State's done to everybody. But look, when it comes down to putting money on the game, scared money don't make any money. And it's a great time to do it. And we got a couple more games in college football, and then college basketball's here too.
Indeed. We're just two smart guys betting on FanDuel. You should be the third. Visit our friends at FanDuel.com. You'll get $200 in bonus bets with your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Jake, reasonable expectations in year one of the Scott Frost era. Look, my good friend Andrew Gluchov over at The Last Word on Sports, we talk about this all the time. What should be the expectation? There are not a ton of teams at the Power 4 level that don't have enough talent to go 6-6 every year. Throw in some luck there and some good coaching. I think 7-5 should be a reasonable floor for a school like UCF. In your mind, what's a reasonable year one expectation for Scott Frost in his first year back down in Orlando?
Well, again, to my point with the transfer portal, I think you can really supplement a roster early. The evaluation process, whether it's from high school recruits or guys in the transfer portal, which I think is easier because they're kind of more proven commodities. I mean, you're basically getting to see what they can do in college. It doesn't really matter the level. If you know how to evaluate, you know how to evaluate. But I think going to a quality bowl game in year one is very doable for UCF. Now, does that mean 8-4? Does that mean 7-5? You look at the schedule, you do have to go to BYU, you go to Cincinnati, you go to Kansas State, you go to Texas Tech, you got a couple more, and the Big 12 is not an easy conference to navigate. And I can make an argument they may not have been the best conference in college football last year, but as far as depth, a lot more teams are similar in this league than they are in some others. It's not super top heavy. It's not super bottom heavy. It's kind of like Goldilocks porridge. It's not too hot, not too cold. It's just right. So look, I know the standard, again, as I talked about earlier at UCF, is still very high. It should remain high. I know with Gus Malzahn, it really didn't work out the way that a lot of people thought. The schedule's not going to be easy, but I don't see why 7-5 or even 8-4 could be out of the question. You need to get off to a good start, though. You look at playing a quality Jacksonville State team, but they just lost their coach, right? Shout out to my guy, Charles Kelly, that got that job. Good buddy of mine. So I think it is somewhat navigable. But again, you have to hit on the guys that you bring in. You really want to set that foundation in year one, and who knows? I think there's a world in which UCF could surprise a lot of people and end up, being in some postseason conversation later in the year. But I would probably set it at a solid 7-5. I would be happy with. And a lot of it it's the way you look too, right? How organized do you look? Are you a team that's heavily penalized? Are you a team that has problems in the special teams area? Did you make the right hires on your staff? Is there friction on the staff? So there's a lot more to look at than just wins and losses, but we all know wins and losses are what gets you paid or get you played.
Agreed. To your point about being able to have success in the Big 12, it's a wide open conference.
Wide open.
Jake, I want to talk about the preseason media poll for the Big 12. Utah was picked to finish number one. They finished like 12th or 13th. Arizona State was picked to finish dead last, and they won the whole damn thing and made the college football playoff. UCF was picked right in the middle of that at 8. They finished 15th in the conference, so it didn't go too well. But look, this is a conference that is wide open right now. I think what Deion's doing at Colorado, Iowa State, BYU, they were all in control of their college football playoff destiny here coming down the stretch, and they just flubbed it. So if you're UCF, there is an opening, I think, to step in and be one of those teams that has a chance to make this playoff. There's no reason that the Big 12 shouldn't have gotten at least 2 teams into this playoff. Agreed?
I think you can make the argument with BYU getting in over SMU. I mean, I think that's the fun of the 12-team playoff. Regardless of how many teams you have in, somebody's going to be pissed off at the end of it. They let 190 teams now in the NCAA tournament in basketball, but the 191st team is always upset and thinks they deserve to get in. But, as far as, the Big 12 was basically the upside down from Stranger Things this year. It was just go back and look at our preseason predictions. I mean, it looked like I've never watched a snap of football the way that it ended up. And I think a lot of people that are logical are like that, or that have been in it are like that. But you also got to look, there's a lot of turnover too happening with some of these top teams, really outside of Iowa State with Rocco Beck. I mean, even Arizona State, I love Sam Levitt. He's an absolute witch. But Scadaboo was the heart and soul of that team. How did they recover without having him? Colorado's losing 2 top 5 picks. You're not probably going to get better, right, at those positions, at least in year one. I like them bringing in Juju Lewis and then Caden Salter from the transfer portal. So you're going to have some teams that are losing a lot. It's going to be cyclical, but I think the way you described it is perfect. It's wide open, and if you're a UCF fan, that's what you want. You don't want to just be walking into Mordor, you know what I'm saying, knowing that you got to fight Sauron year one. You'd much rather walk into the Shire and just start slapping hobbits around.
I agree. Look, the Big 12, man, holy crap, dude. Iowa State, BYU, Arizona State, Colorado, all these teams had a shot at this playoff somewhere in the back half of the season. And it was crazy to see them all just fumble the bag. Arizona State rose to the occasion and gave us probably the best playoff game we've seen since this 12-team playoff started.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, what Arizona State was able to do coming back in that game, it probably the most impressive part of that was not that they were able to find ways with Scatabo to make plays. It's that the Arizona State defense was able to shut down the run. I think that's the difference in some of these, top conferences. It's at the line of scrimmage. That's you look at Colorado. We can talk about Shadur and Travis Hunter, and we should. They're incredible. I like Shepard, the pieces, Horn Jr., the pieces that they have. But the reason Colorado was able to compete at a higher level this year because they were better on the offensive line and defensive line. So if you're Scott Frost going into UCF, if you want to be able to be the Rosetta Stone teacher of the new language or the translator, if you're good up front, you can build stuff around it. I'd much rather be really good up front and okay around it than okay up front and really good around it.
Yeah, look, Arizona State is not a better program than UCF. I lived in Phoenix for 8 years. I'm telling you, there's no culture there. I'm not particularly fond of their fan base. If you're UCF, there is definitely an opportunity, I think, to build something in this new era of college football. You just got to get the fans. You got to get the NIL support.
Momentum.
Yeah, the fan support is there. They've got a great young fan base, and they're building their culture as we speak. So, it's going to be fun to watch that. But look, hey, what does Scott Frost have to accomplish this spring? My good friend Jake Crane from the Daily Wire over at Crane & Co. is going to talk with us about what their spring goals should be right after a quick word from our sponsors. This episode of Locked On UCF Jake is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. I am trying to get my mom, my sister, and my girlfriend to Auburn versus Tennessee basketball. And I can tell you those tickets are insane right now. $1,000 for like the nosebleeds right now, Jake. I know you attend a lot of games. What was the last game you went to?
Man, I tell you what, and my wife, we're about to have a child, so I hadn't been able to go to a lot of them lately. But I went to the Alabama Vandy football game, which
that's not a bad one.
Boy, that ended a little bit different. As a kid from Auburn, I'm not going to lie, I got a lot of satisfaction walking out of the stadium that day. But, man, we already got some tickets to go watch the Preds play now that it's NHL season. I love going to hockey games. Watching it on TV, it's okay. Going to it, there's nothing like a live sporting event.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. But look, if you're buying tickets to a live sporting event, take the guesswork out of it with our friends at Game Time. No hidden fees at checkout. And trust me, if I get these tickets to this Auburn-Tennessee basketball game, I'm going to try and save every dollar I can to get the three of them there. Download the Game Time app and create an account. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Jake, you've coached it. You've talked about it. Let's talk about spring goals. You've covered many spring practices in your time, as have I. But if you're Scott Frost, what are your main goals this spring, returning as head coach? Is it just sorting out the roster? Is he under any pressure to name a quarterback at the end of the spring? What are you looking for at the end of spring to say UCF made the right decision and they're headed the right direction with Scott Frost?
Yeah, well, it's multiple things, and you hit a couple of them. I think the number one thing you have to do is reestablish your culture, reestablish the way that you practice, reestablish your expectations, what you want it to look like, right? Because when you get into fall camp, if you're still trying to do that, it's already too late and you're probably going to be in big trouble. So getting guys used to the way that practice is structured, getting them used to understanding how the meetings are structured when you actually do have practice. Now, outside of that, on the philosophical stuff, more to the fundamental stuff, a lot of it is terminology. Offensively and defensively, because guys are going to have to learn new terminology. And that's not just meaning that, the guys coming in from the transfer portal have to learn. It's the guys that are there. A lot of people run the same stuff. They just call it something different. So if your schemes change, understanding what the goal of that scheme is, what you call things, what you call fronts, what you call coverages, what you call formations, what you call motions, what you call route combinations, all those type things, and getting them used to how you practice, right? And what you expect from them. So personnel, obviously. Now, I never wanted to put I have to do this and name a starter at this place. I want competition. I'm going to name the starter when the best guy shows that he's the best guy. And that's not just at quarterback. It's at long snapper. It's at corner. It's at nickel. It's at guard. It's at tight end. So you never want to put yourself in a corner and say, well, I have to do this by this time, because that's how you lose respect from the players. You can't put an expiration date on something like that. They need to realize that this guy got the job because of the way he practiced, the way he showed up in meetings, and the way that he led. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot to juggle. But again, the most important thing is instilling that culture of who you want this team to be and what the identity of this team will be.
Yeah, you and I both covered Gus extensively in his time at Auburn. Obviously, you and I both have ties to him and his staff. But I would say that one of the things that they do have to do, you say culture, I say identity. They have to reestablish an identity as a program. Who do you want to be? What kind of football do you want to play? The tug of war between I will call plays, I won't call plays kind of thing, I think it hurt UCF. And Scott Frost is still one of the better play callers in college football. I'll be interested to see how he works that out on his staff. Do you expect Frost will call plays here in year one? Does he trust somebody else with his vision, or does he take that into his own hands?
Well, I just don't know how you build yourself up calling plays, and then when you get to a spot where you're the man in charge, you stop doing what you're best at, regardless of how much you trust somebody. If I made $1 million making pancakes, I'm not just going to let somebody else make the pancakes when I get to open up my own 5-star restaurant. I'm going to make the freaking pancakes. So that's how I would approach it. I think that's how a lot of guys approach it. I got PTSD from you bringing up Gus Malzahn going back and forth on the play calling. There's a reason he ate the game-winning meals at Waffle House, because nobody waffled more on who calls the plays than that guy. Even though I got a lot of respect for Gus, but man, you talk about having a fatal flaw. That is it. So I can't tell you the future exactly what Coach Frost is going to do, but I'd be pretty surprised if he isn't the guy at the end of the day that's making the pancakes.
You're making pancakes over at the Daily Wire. Before we get out of here, tell people where they can find you, Jake.
Yeah, man, really easy. We're also on YouTube. We're on Roku, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, pretty much everywhere. We go live 2 p.m. Central to 3:30 p.m. Central. We have live calls. We have a live chat. It's a lot of fun over there. It's very interactive. Our slogan is win the water cooler. We want to have the most informed audience that can win every argument they get in, whether it's at work, whether it's at a family gathering, or whether you're just sitting with your best friend having a beer. So check us out over at Crane & Company. It's CRAIN & Company, and we have a lot of fun.
Guys, thank you so much for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every day. For your second listen, go check out our friends over at Locked On Big 12. Our guy Drake Toll leads the conversation in conference realignment news and pulls no punches when it comes to talking about every team in the Big 12, including the UCF Knights. You can find them on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find us right back here tomorrow on Locked On UCF.